What's up, fight fans from all around the world? This is your fight goddess, Chris Baldwin, and I'm here in the war room this weekend with Melissa Smith. She is our women's boxing historian, and Mr. Eddie Goldman. He is the conscious of combat sports. You guys, welcome back into the war room. We are going to kick it right off to you, Melissa, because we're covering the Katie Taylor and the Cameron 2 fight, and Katie Taylor won. Congratulations.
Yeah,
She racked up
did.
those belts. Now, I happened to catch, I didn't see the whole fight, but I did catch the post-fight. They have the presser at the end of the. So the whole presser, nobody asked about the knockdown. But when we got to the end, some reporter asked about Conor McGregor. And Eddie, I want to give it up to Eddie Hearn for shutting him down immediately and saying, why are we talking about Conor McGregor? This is Katie Taylor's moment. We are not talking about that. If you want to talk about that, you guys can see me afterwards, but we're not going to sit here and talk about Conor McGregor right now. And the whole room got quiet, right? And I just said, thank you, Eddie, for standing up. That's what you're supposed to do, right? Why are you guys asking about Conor McGregor? What does he have to do with this Katie Taylor Cameron fight?
And with the fact that she's the third fighter in history to won undisputed in 2 weight classes. The only other fighters are Terence Crawford and Claressa Shields, and Claressa Shields did it first. And she sent out a text last night, a tweet last night saying, "Hey, welcome to the club, my girl."
Right. That's incredible. Incredible for performance by those women. So hats off to the ladies for making it happen.
Let me just add the context of that. And I agreed with what Eddie Hearn did. But the context of that with McGregor are a couple of things. McGregor's whatever that liquor he's making was a sponsor of the fight.
Oh,
and
okay.
Yep.
McGregor helped build a statue for Katie Taylor. Those are 2 of the most popular athletes in Ireland. But Katie Taylor is much more popular overall than, I think anyway, than most people say is true, that she's much more popular. And he's just trying to jump on the bandwagon from his one bad attempt to pretend that he's a boxer also a few years ago when he got whipped by Mayweather.
Right.
But there was an even more recent context to it that was completely wrong. I don't know what reporter that was. I couldn't hear because Eddie Hearn shut him down. But a couple of days ago, there was a situation in Ireland where some lunatic stabbed a bunch of people, including some young girls. And according to news reports, the person might have been not Irish, might have been from another country. I don't know that the details have been released, but he was subdued by bystanders until the cops could come. And the bystanders were a group of people that included an Irish woman, an American woman tourist, and a Brazilian who was a delivery worker who happened to be passing by and saw the whole thing going on. And they helped subdue this guy until the cops came, and of course he was arrested. This led to ultra right-wing hooligans having riots in Dublin and, burning down a McDonald's and other idiotic things like that, and caused a lot of damage, and the police had to come out. And McGregor goes on social media pouring flames on the fire. Again, he's a UFC guy, so he's part of that fascist, racist UFC culture, saying Ireland is at war, why are we letting all these immigrants in, and blah, blah, blah. All this kind of stuff, just fueling the flames. And he was denounced by the authorities for doing that. And Katie, meanwhile, this week was focused on the fight. She was doing far fewer interviews leading up to the fight because she didn't want to be distracted. She wasn't doing all the pre-fight stuff that she had done before the first fight meeting with children and posing for pictures and endless media interviews and all that, because she had one thing in mind. She was going in there not to do TV interviews, not to be on the internet, but to fight, to win that fight, which of course we know that she did, and she had to be single-minded about it. So she was aware of that, and she did say something. It was either the post-fight press conference or someone else, how it was such a shame that these children got stabbed, but nothing really beyond that. She's not there as a news commentator, as a presenter, as a political commentator. She's there as a boxer, of which she's doing an extraordinary world-class job. And if there was any doubt before, cemented her place after she retires in the Hall of Fame. So that was the context with McGregor. I just wanted to add that. And in terms of, there was a situation Thursday night, right before the fight, where parts of Dublin had to be closed down. They had to close down the bus service. This is according to news reports in the area of the Three Arena where the fight was held. So there was, but that was solved by Friday. Things were calm, according to news reports. It was totally inappropriate to bring up all these political questions at the post-fight press conference, celebrating Katie Taylor's historic victory over Chantelle Cameron. Again, Katie Taylor moving up in weight. She still is the undisputed champion at lightweight, but she moved up again for a second time against the advice of a lot of us to fight Chantelle Cameron at Cameron's ideal weight of 140, and she clearly beat her this time. So all this stuff about bringing up McGregor was just totally inappropriate. I'm not against bringing up political issues or outside issues, but this was completely uncalled for and inappropriate. And Eddie Hearn ended the press conference at that point because they had run out of questions. I'll add just one thing. I know Melissa could go more detailed of the fight. That for a while, I've learned a little secret. I'm going to tell you a little secret that some other people know. You might know this. For these fights, I usually watch the press conference and the weigh-ins. And at the press conference and the weigh-ins is just a lot of platitudes. I want to thank this person. I trained better, all this stuff. That's not to see, because again, the vast majority of the time, that stuff is just boring cliches. You want to find some clue about the mindset of the fighter, about their confidence, about if they're relaxed going into a fight like this. In this case, where the rematch, Cameron was again the big favorite, and all the pundits was saying she's going to win again. And I was watching the press conference and then the weigh-ins where they had the stare down, and Katie Taylor is standing there with what looked like a very confident little smirk on her face. Very, very relaxed. And I said to myself, holy shit, she's going to win this thing. Because that's how close the two of them are. And Cameron stood there stone-faced, not stare down like stone-faced, but looked a little bit intimidated there. Now, that doesn't always work out. I've seen it work out the other ways, where one fighter, quote, wins the press conference or the stare down and then gets knocked out in the ring. But it's a little hint that people should try to watch. I didn't write it up, but I told you about it, that Katie Taylor looked very, very relaxed going into this. Right. And sure enough, we saw what happened. In my opinion, thus far, is the 2023 fight of the year in boxing.
Wow! All right.
Yeah, I'll second that fight of the year, and I'll also second that Katie had a she was in the zone. And I kind of knew it from, Sandy Ryan, who's a really talented boxer, had put out a couple of posts on social media saying she had just finished camp with Katie. And there was something about her language in her tweets that said, she's really ready. She's on. And I think Katie really was in the zone. I think just in our last time that we were talking, we mentioned that in May, ahead of the first fight with Cameron, it was all the pressure of her first fight in Ireland after never having fought there professionally in 20 fights. There was the switch in opponents. She was supposed to getting ready for Amanda 2, and then all of a sudden she's up in weight fighting Chantelle Cameron. There was all that huge heavy lift of her obligations when she was in Ireland. I mean, just the day before, she has this emotional reunion with Deidre Gogarty, who was her boxing heroine, who helped pave the way for her as an icon in boxing in Ireland. So there was all that pressure on her. This time it's like, well, what do I have to lose?
Right.
I've already lost,
And
so
she
now
had 6 months, right? She had 6 months.
She had 6 months to work it through mentally. They approached camp differently. And she had a time to really analyze what she did wrong. The first fight, she was on the back foot practically the entire time and always coming from behind. Right. This time, even though she would be on the back foot for some portions of the rounds, she then stepped forward with a quick snapping jab, and she was following it up with combinations, and she was very fast. And if Cameron was coming in towards her, she grabbed hold, jumped back, and then hit her again. So there was a lot of obvious practiced combinations. She was enticed in from time to time into a firefight, which Cameron is going to potentially come out the winner of because she's just physically bigger, right, physically stronger, potentially. But I got to tell you, Katie roughed her up.
Oh, yeah. Sure did.
Katie roughed her up. I mean, if we look at the fight from the beginning, just in that first round alone, they were both sharp, on point, on target, really, demonstrating what elite boxing is all about. Then there was a flash, and Katie was on her butt, and there were people screaming, it was a knockdown, but the ref ruled that it was a slip. And if you look at the video and you look at the way she fell, which was just right back on her butt, Cameron had her foot on Katie's foot. Yep. As she was throwing. And to me, I saw it as she genuinely fell down from the feet.
I don't know. That looked like a knockdown to me.
I've had that happen to me sparring. Right. That same on your butt. I mean, usually when you're knocked down, you don't just jump back on your butt because you've lost your footing. You're hit, and you're either going one way or the other way when you're knocked down. So anyway, I saw it as
the video. There are videos that clearly show that Cameron's left foot was on
Taylor's right.
Taylor's. Why was it right foot or a front foot or left?
It was her front foot. I guess it was the left.
Left foot was clearly on her foot.
Yeah, she was
through the punch. So that's why it was, and the referee was looking right at it, and that's why they called it not a knockdown.
Yeah, to me, I having been in that position where I've landed on my butt from the feet, I got it. So to me, it wasn't a knockdown because I've had that happen to me, and it's so bloody embarrassing. You go, but you didn't knock me down, God damn it! You kicked my foot.
They could have shown a close up better than they did.
But whatever. So anyway, I bring that up because there are people say, "Oh, it was a knockdown. They're already giving it to Katie," and then threw the whole psychology of the fight off. And if she had really been called a knockdown, it would have been 10-8 that first round. Would have changed fight. Okay, well, whatever. It wasn't called that way.
Which wouldn't have changed the scores, by the way.
No,
wouldn't change. It would have been a split decision instead of a majority decision. had everything else remained the
Had
same.
everything else been the same. But anyway, the point was they were both so sharp. But there was something in Katie, to Eddie's point. Katie was clear-eyed. Katie was on point.
She was focused.
Focused. She was a laser. And she was like, oh yeah, you're going to hit me? I'm going to hit you back. Because at the end of the day, as good a boxer as she is, at all the other accolades that come of this extraordinary woman who has completely revolutionized where women are in the sport, alongside, you know, her sister in boxing, Clarissa Shields, but in some ways even more so because of her impact as, for a long time, as an amateur boxer, even before the Olympics. To see her at 37 years of age come out there and say, you are not going to win. I will persevere.
That's right.
And she did, and they were close rounds. I don't take anything away from Cameron, but Katie Taylor, when she's on, has an extra gear. We saw it when she fought Amanda Serrano, in my estimation, and I saw it last night when she fought Chantelle Cameron. And the difference with Serrano is there was an emotional content to that fight because of its importance as in Madison Square Garden, first time women were, you know, the main event in the main room. This fight was just like, no, I'm not going down. I am not done with boxing, and boxing is not done with me. I have more to give for myself. I have more to do. And I think more than any other fight I've ever seen, this was for Katie. And through 10 rounds of extraordinary performance between both of these women, putting everything they had into it.
Right.
Katie just had that little extra kick. And when you saw her exuberance when she won, and that game face, that I did it, that incredible pride in herself, in this extraordinary test that she had, it was awe-inspiring.
Yeah,
it really was.
She should be. Her whole team should be proud. It's very rare. Like, I'm a conditioning coach, so you know I can talk about expertly on people's conditioning, but to see the performance, like I can see subtle changes. The changes Katie made from the last fight I saw to this fight, to me, were dramatic. Like, they were remarkable changes. Like, the execution, her speed, it looked like to me her combos were a little quicker. She was a little sharper. Yeah, it was like she put those 4 punches together. She would double up that jab. I was
she'd
like,
double
what?
And she'd be holding up, and then she'd pull out enough to just boom, you know, hit her with the left, hit her with the right, and using uppercuts, using the whole range of punching, going up and down in the body. I mean, they didn't neglect the body. I mean, these are two incredible warriors, and I don't take anything away from Cameron. Cameron's a remarkable fighter. Chantelle Cameron is one of the greats in the sport.
It was a really good fight.
It was a great fight. I hope they do it again for a third. And you know, Katie,
where a third one happens, where in London?
Well, that's the discussion about. I would just say also key was her defense was taking away Cameron's jab. Cameron in the first fight was able to establish the jab first and land first. This time that didn't happen, and Katie was sharper. But as for the question is, okay, what happens next? Obviously, the end of the year, they're going to rest up, celebrate with their families. Katie, who lives in Connecticut, I think is going to stay in Ireland for a while with her family. Her mother was in the ring after that fight, jumping up and down. I don't know what that material was she was wearing. It looked like aluminum foil or something. Something like that, but that's who the woman was celebrating with her. Everybody wants to see a trilogy. They're 1-1 now, but there are a couple of factors to consider. First of all, as we mentioned, Katie Taylor is now the undisputed champion simultaneously at 2 weights, 140 and 135. the sanctioning bodies are going to say, all right, pick one of those weights. You can't remain as undisputed champion for both of these weights. So if they want to have the trilogy fight at 140, which is likely since Cameron's a 140-pound fighter, they're going to start stripping her of her lightweight belts. And that will open up the chance for younger fighters, Carolyn Dubois and others, to fight for a lightweight title. And, you know, Amanda Serrano might throw herself in that mix also. They would open up a whole lot of different things. And the place that they want to do it, and Katie Taylor mentioned in a post-fight interview, and Eddie Hearn mentioned in the post-fight press conference, is Croke Park in London. This is a huge outdoor stadium that holds a lot of traditional Irish sports. This is like the Wembley Stadium, the Yankee Stadium of Dublin. And this would be absolutely huge. As we know, boxing has been away from the Republic of Ireland for several years after the Regency Hotel shooting, and it was pretty much only Katie Taylor could bring it back. But it was at the 3 Arena, which is about a 9,000-seat indoor arena. You have this fight at Croke Park after these first 2 amazing fights. It could definitely fill up this outdoor stadium. It could definitely set all kinds of records for an outdoor show being headlined by a women's title fight, all these things. However, the reason they haven't fought at Croke Park yet is not so much economics, in my view. That may be part of it, but it's security. Because you have, as I mentioned this incident on Thursday, you have these various drug gangs still running around. They still haven't caught Kinahan. And there's all this feedback from that. And I think at an indoor 9,000-seat arena, it's probably a little easier to flood the place with security than it is at an outdoor stadium.
Yeah, with 50,000 people. That's a lot of people.
Upwards 60, 70,
whatever
80,000, 80,000, whatever, an incredibly huge crowd. I think they believe, from what I gathered from Eddie Hearn, that the economics will work out, that they could sell it out, that this could be on international pay-per-view, presumably on DAZN, and they could make enough money that way with sponsorships and all that kind of stuff going on. And it'll get a tremendous amount of international attention, not just in Ireland and the UK, but wherever there are boxing fans. But the question is, they have to get the cooperation of the Irish government. Hearn said he's not asking to get the stadium for free.
Right.
Is what he says anyway. He's not saying give us this place for free. Whatever the rental is on it, they're willing to do that, but they have to have the cooperation of the government for these security matters and the approval of them to do it. Now, I think there's going to be a lot of pressure on if there isn't already, on the politicians to say, this is going to be the biggest boxing show in the biggest professional boxing show in the history of Ireland, and one of the biggest, if not the biggest, sporting event in the history of Ireland, by your most popular athlete nearing the end of her career in this trilogy with her in-ring rival, Chantelle Cameron. The storylines are all there, but they have to get some assistance in this and at least some cooperation in doing it. And that's not entirely clear at this point. So we'll see what happens. And then again, assuming it's at 140, which I'm assuming that's where it's going to be, you have to start to think Katie Taylor's nearing the end of her career. She will only have so many fights left. What does she want to do if she wins next year at 140 in the trilogy? Does she want to hang it up? Or does she want to take some showcase fights to end her career with a bunch of applause or do an international tour? We don't really know at this point, but that's what everybody talked about. Next year, probably in May, Croke Park, Dublin, the trilogy, it will sell itself. So let's see what they can do.
Well, I hope she
Well,
retires
listen,
on top.
Yeah, and she sold out 13,000 at for this show. She sold out 20,000 at Madison Square Garden. So, we know she
it'll
can
be a
sell.
sellout. They'll stack a card. Eddie will make a card that will sell.
No, they'll stack it. And listen, I gotta say, the undercard was pretty darn good for this.
Yeah, I watched a couple good fights on that card for free.
Yeah, the really good card.
Yeah.
And an incredible fight and an incredible, endorsement for women in the ring. And I'm really here to say that it just shows that it demonstrates the elite nature of female fighters and their extraordinary ability in the ring to not only fight well, but to entertain. It was an incredibly entertaining, fast, quick, a lot of action, a lot of heart in your mouth moments throughout the fight, and that's what boxing, that's what professional boxing is all about, is entertain your guests, entertain the people who are paying to see you.
Absolutely.
So I was very pleased and just felt that it was a great advertisement for women in the ring. And my heart goes out to Cameron, who really worked her ass off. It just didn't quite make it last time she did. We'll see what happens in a trilogy. And as
best woman won.
Best woman won in my estimation. And I didn't think it was a robbery. 98, 97 or whatever.
One of those scorecards is crazy. Yeah.
Yeah, but that's boxing. But 96, 94 was 5. It was fair to me. You could see a draw on certain rounds. So it was fair to me to have a split D in her favor. And I'm just proud of her, and I'm proud of women in the ring.
Right.
And I'm proud to be an advocate for it and to continue to tell their stories.
Absolutely. Keep shattering that glass ring, baby.
That's it.
And I think this fight, when you really look at it, transcended boxing and transcended all the nonsense that we see in the sport. The 98-92 score was one example of it. And I really view it as an historic gift to the fans and a wondrous reminder why we watch this stuff in the first place.
Yeah, I'm with you.
Absolutely. Well, we watch it because, it is, like you said, entertaining. It gives us someone to root for, because, the human spirit loves to root for the underdog. And I'm usually the underdog rooter, and women have always been the underdog.
They continue to be.
Right. Even Eddie in the press conference said his dad asked him the first time he showed up with Katie Teller, his dad pulled him aside and said, "What are you doing? Like, what is wrong with you? Women don't box."
That was funny the way he said it.
Yeah, the way he told that story.
He told it like a grumpy old man.
Yeah.
Exactly. What are you doing here? Like with a Cockney accent, which I can't do. Women don't box.
Right. It was so good. But now look where we are.
But look where
boxing.
we are
That's right.
in women's boxing. And yes, many women don't get opportunities or still box for $3,000 or $4,000, $5,000 for titles. I mean, we know that the boxing is unfair and it exploits people, and men and women in particular. They have even less opportunity and less clout. But then you have these magic moments in the sport and opportunities in the sport for greatness. And it's why boxing remains this extraordinary story, because it is this individual pitted against another individual. And it's taking all of that skill, all of that opportunity, and then this extraordinary pas de deux of action and reaction, defense and offense, and this beautiful
skill and
dance.
Strategy,
Skill, strategy, and the mind. And you can see what one what made it possible for Katie to win last night was that grace of being in the moment and having that opportunity to just see 360 degrees at all time, to find that, to make the opportunities happen for her so that she could persevere and win. And I'm just so proud to have seen her be able to do that one more time. Hopefully more than that, but to redeem herself and her own sense of her being. It's beautiful work.
Well, I hope she goes on to mentor and coach the young ones coming up. You know, maybe they'll be competing in the World Boxing Organization. That's the new organization. So let's just jump into this conversation because our friend Boris has been nominated as the president.
He's been voted in.
He's been voted in by the Congress. So, Eddie, do you want to give us a breakdown of how that happened and how many countries are now a part of the World Boxing Organization?
Over the weekend, World Boxing held its inaugural Congress in Frankfurt, Germany. And if you want to see it, there's a long video on the World Boxing YouTube page. You got to search for it because they said they have to bring in more sponsors and revenues and get their social media and their media presence up to snuff. You shouldn't have to be a private investigator to find out where where this thing is. But what happened at this Congress, they had 25 national federations voting. One national federation that's a member was not able to attend, the U.S. Virgin Islands, so they were not able to vote. And GB Boxing, which sort of encompasses England, Wales, and Scotland, is an associate member, and they can't vote in these elections, but they're part of this whole movement. And so this was the first Congress. So they had to deal with some legal stuff where they approved the setting up of World Boxing. They approved the structure. They approved the Constitution. They approved the temporary, the interim executive committee, and that they could set up an elected president and some vice presidents and members of their executive committee and other positions. So they did a lot of that stuff. To me, the most interesting thing, you could watch this. The video says it's 5 hours, but it's actually about 3.5 or three and a half, because they had a lunch break and a coffee break in there. So you could just sort of skip through that on the YouTube. The most interesting thing was the election for president, because unlike the way the Russians did it in IBA, where they didn't want a real election to take place, they had a contested election. And it was Boris van der Vorst, who was really one of the original founders of World Boxing. He recently left the Dutch Boxing Federation because he's going to devote all his attention out to World Boxing, running for president against Elise Signal of the United States. And they gave speeches, and a lot of the speeches the people gave pretty much sounded the same. But there was some interesting questions where the delegates had a chance to question the different candidates. And so I believe it was Steve Hartley from New Zealand, who's also been very outspoken, and one of the people that the Russian-led IBA wouldn't let run for the board of directors when they were still part of IBA, asked both Elise Signal and later Boris van der Vorst, because she spoke first, what had they been doing up to that point to help World Boxing. And the context of that question was this. Late last year and early this year, a number of the original founders, as I said, left, and their federations quit IBA, USA Boxing, and other federations. And a number of these individuals said, that's it. We've tried to reform this thing. It's not going anywhere. Russia has a vice grip on it. They won't allow elections, which even the IOC criticized. They kicked their candidates from even being considered as members of the executive board. They have some non-transparent financing, which could be some combination between Russia and Dubai, two of the most wonderfully uncorrupt places in the world. And they're running a lot of different events in Dubai now. So that leads me to believe that's where some of their money is coming from. And they said, that's it. We got to set up something new. And at the end of 2022 and the beginning of 2023, where they officially announced that World Boxing came into existence. Signal was a representative of the United States, but she was on the board of IBA, and she remained on that board all the time while Boris van der Vorst and the New Zealand people and all these other people left IBA to focus on building world boxing and bringing in different national federations. And even though USA Boxing was the first national federation to officially quit IBA and join World Boxing, she stayed on the board for several months more and really only left when pretty much when the IOC said, that's it, you're out of the Olympic movement. And IBA said, well, USA Boxing left and they're now part of World Boxing, so you're an American, so you really can't stay on the board. So she was there, I don't know how many months, but a much longer period of time. So she was asked about this. And she said, with a lot of bureaucratic rhetoric and stuff, well, I try to keep the fight going inside the organization and all this. It was not something contentious or nasty at all. But it was clear that it was a criticism for her waiting so long and not standing in solidarity with all these other people that were longtime boxing people and said, that's it. We tried to do this for years. AIBA and then IBA have been suspended since 2019. They're not getting better. They're getting worse. We got to leave. And she stuck around and let them do the work to build world boxing. And then she turns around and she wants to become president of World Boxing.
That is crazy.
So I'm being much harsher than what was publicly said. Boris van der Vorst and the others were very diplomatic about it. So they had the vote, and it was, you could look up the numbers. It was 60-something% for Boris and 30-something% for Elise. And I was surprised that she got that many votes. But so Boris van der Vorst won, but it was a contested election. And he is now the first president, elected president, in a contested election, as I said, of World Boxing. And among the executive board, the vice presidents and the executive board members, I'm not sure what the Americans did, because originally Tyson Lee, the president of USA Boxing, was going to run for one of those positions, but he didn't run. And no Americans were elected to vice president or to the executive board. So I don't know really what that indicates. I don't know that there are hostilities or whatever, but there appear to be some different approaches that are going on there. And so I'm glad Boris ran and won, because he's been the guy that's been fighting for this the hardest and the longest, and it's his vision that has been really key, and he's carried this out in practice. So they have these 26 active national federations as of this point. They say that at the Congress there are other national federations that have applied, but they don't just say, oh yeah, you can get in. It's not like, you're signing up to subscribe to Peacock or something. You put in your email address and you're banking information and you got it. No, they have to be vetted. They have a company that they're working with to check all these things out. And even if it's a known national federation, they got to find out, is this really the national federation or just somebody saying they represent the national federation, or is this like a real crooked outfit running some racket? They do their due diligence on this. So since it got close to the Congress, they said, look, we really don't have time to deal with these other applications. Now they do, right after the Congress is done, and they could start to really organize themselves. And they say that they claim that by the next Congress, which will be about the same time next year, I don't think they have a date or location yet. They expect to have 50 members that are full members of world boxing. So we'll see where this all leads. And
did they, and just to interrupt a little bit, to say, did they also address, the giant, elephant, if you will, in terms of how to gain the confidence of the IOC to assure that boxing remains a sport in the Olympic movement in Los Angeles in 2028?
Yeah, there's an unofficial deadline of 2025 where the program for LA 28 is finalized and set in stone. Mm-hmm. What sports are in, what dates the competition will be, what venues they will be in. Now, there'll be some tinkering and changes, of course, along the way, because unforeseen events or, little glitches and problems, but that's when they got to get it together. So they're starting, they didn't speak about it because I think everybody knew the process. They have to get enough national federations from a wide variety of continents. Right now, it's very heavy with Europe and North America and the English-speaking world. They have to get a lot more. They have one in Africa from Nigeria. They have the Philippines in Asia. They got to get a lot more from Asia and Africa. They do have a couple from Latin America. They're going to probably expand there a little bit more easily. But they got to grow in those areas. They got to run successful tournaments, which is starting to do. They got to show to the IOC, when you become on the program, you're going to be the ones organizing the sport for the Olympics. So you have to be able to demonstrate you can successfully run a tournament. You have the right athletes, fair officiating, fair rules, all that stuff. Media, you have your own website and media people that deal with that issue, and all those types of things, that you could bring in sponsors, that people want to watch you on TV. I think boxing will be one of the more popular sports in LA in 2028, but they got to get all this organized in the real world. So I think they know those are some of the things that they have to do. They got to make sure that their statutes are all approved by the IOC. They talked about anti-doping. Everybody said we need a robust anti-doping program. Great. You got to set it up. You got to work with the International Testing Agency. You got to do all these types of things so that you got a functioning international federation. They're on their way to doing it, but the clock is ticking, and they have to start running continental championships. And if you only have one or two countries from the continent, it's kind of hard to run a continental championship.
Especially since it's particularly in the amateur sport side, where you have so much participation from smaller countries in Asia, in Africa, in South America. But most importantly, in Asia in particular, there's a tremendous number of countries that participate. And then powerhouses like India and China and some of the Central Asian republics, Turkey, that also have excellent presence at these events and win medals. not only just at the elite women's and men's level, but also for the junior levels and the youth levels, which become very important because the kids get the opportunity and the experience and exposure of international competition that then feeds them into the elite Olympic level,
right,
kind of, and world level competition. So it really is imperative for them to act quickly and smartly to begin to gain confidence and demonstrate to those countries that may not be participating just yet how they're doing it differently, how they're doing it fairly, and how they're giving real opportunity to their fighters.
They're going to need some kind of boost from Thomas Bach. They're going to need some kind of, it won't be necessarily a formal endorsement, but a couple of months ago, he commented on them when he was asked about them when they were much smaller. He said, well, they only had like a dozen or so federations.
Right.
And he said they don't even have 20 federations. So he's telling them, get your act together. They've said, the IOC people have said a zillion times, they want boxing on the program. They have no problem with the sport of boxing. This is what they say anyway. They have no problem with the boxers. The problem was with the leadership of the IBA. But Kremlev is throwing around that money, keeping a number of these smaller federations involved with them. And you have a lot of, look, the amateur boxing movement is very corrupt. You have a lot of these federations where the people at the top will take some money. The boxers will get nothing or next to nothing. No, won't have equipment or whatever. And a couple of grand thrown at these federations will keep them loyal.
Yeah, no, absolutely. You have to give them opportunities. And that's the thing that where, the IBA has been very corrupt, as we all know, and we know where they get their money from. But that's kept these smaller organizations in line. And look, it was what AIBA did, right? I mean, that's what all the judging nonsense was about to begin with, because smaller organizations wanted opportunities for their fighters to win. So there were, money changing hands or all the other kinds of things, nefarious actions that go to corrupt the sport. But this is an opportunity to rethink it and to rethink governance, leadership at the international level of governance that can then permeate into the national organizations, so that there are very similar and very, very clear standards for judging, for choosing champions, for doping, for all the attendant things that go into it, and also importantly for the safety of the athletes. Under AIBA, they got rid of helmets for men. It remains controversial. There was a male fighter who died about a year ago or so in the ring fighting, 3-minute rounds from a boxing event. So, I mean, these things also need to be addressed, that certainly IBA has not touched with a 10-foot pole, but something that world boxing really needs to start to consider as it begins to develop a strong governance platform. Things such as safety need to really be taken into consideration, of which doping is part of it, but also fairness in terms of judging and reffing, which has the objective of keeping the fighters safe.
Yeah, and the other side of it is that there is a political side of it. Putin is starting his so-called friendship games next year.
Yeah.
And what they want to do is say, although they deny it, is compete with the Olympics. They have an event, a big international multi-sport event about a month before the Paris Olympics, about a month after the Paris Olympics, because Russia will likely not be getting back under their own name and flag for the Paris 2024 Olympics. They might be allowed as so-called neutrals, which I think is too much, but they're going to find that embarrassing. Again, they're pariahs in the Olympic movement, too corrupt for the Olympic movement, which is really, really saying something. And one of the people who's key to putting together the friendship games, so-called, is Kremlev. And so he's going to have the
Yeah.
IBA there, and they want to get enough countries competing. They just don't want it to be a couple of Russian, a couple of Eastern European and Central Asian countries there. So they're throwing their money around for their event to essentially compete with the Olympics. And the IOC has told federations, you shouldn't really be part of this because this event is in competition with the Olympics, the way they've set this whole thing up. So these federations are going to have to make a decision one way or the other. And time is running out on all of that. And they're going to have to decide whether they want to be part of the Olympic movement or part of this rogue event with the Russians. And of course, you can just imagine what the anti-doping will be like at the Russian-led games.
Yeah. Just thinking about doping holiday, where dope goes to live.
USADA, the Russian anti-doping agency, is still non-compliant by WADA. Still. So who's going to be doing the anti-doping there? It's going to be a joke.
Well, it's a joke everywhere. I mean, that we had all this stuff this week from Alicia Baumgartner releasing her hair follicle test. I'm sorry, it's not the state of Michigan.
First of all, let me
Good
ask.
on you.
Let me ask.
Means zero.
Who gave her a hair follicle test? Who is she saying gave her a hair follicle test?
She did it her. Oh, I did it myself. I'm sorry.
She didn't name the agency.
She did it herself. I'm sorry. It has nothing to do with anything. You got a positive A test. The state of Michigan is required to manage this process. They have failed. And because they have failed, she now has the space and room to be claiming, oh, no, I'm exonerated. Look, my hair follicle was clean.
No.
It means nothing.
That means enough. Absolutely
What it
nothing.
shows, what it demonstrates, though, is the complete failure of the state of Michigan and of doping in American boxing. It is absolute failure. And that is why you have this nonsense going on and giving her the space and time to be able to do this. Meanwhile, we're still going to wait for the WBO to get their documents back on their show cause. There's no way they're going to really respond. So they're going to end up stripping her of one belt, and we'll see who else strips her or decides to strip her or not. But this exists in the vacuum of absolute failure of governance. And that's where we are. And it's just shameful, disgraceful.
And it also shows, again, we had talked earlier this year that it looked like there was a revival of boxing in Michigan, led by these two cards that were headlined by Clarissa Shields. The Little Caesars Arena, that's the big arena in Detroit. Boxing is back in Detroit with such a long history of boxing there, and in the state of Michigan. And then a couple of weeks later, there was the card that Baumgartner headlined. And both times the Michigan Commission screwed it up. And so what promoter, what network is going to want to go there again? Boxing is falling apart in the United States anyway. So I don't know, you may have some news. Baumgartner, I think, is still banned by the Association of Boxing.
She's banned by ABA in America, which is the Association of Boxing, and which is all of the state commissions are a part of that umbrella. So technically, she can't box in the United States, although she can box in Indian in a casino run by
on a reservation
potentially.
Some of those are part of the ABC.
If they're not part of ABA, then they don't have ABC or whatever. They
should be fighting smokers.
Or she could just go to Europe. She can go box in Europe. That's not the ABC.
Nope.
Meanwhile, she doesn't have any fights. And then you've got, she fought Christina Linardatu, and Christina and her team, Eddie, Ludabella, they're fit to kill. It's like, what's going on here?
Yeah. So what happens with that? If she loses her belt, do the belts, who gets those belts? Or are they just
nobody?
Nobody.
It's it's vacant, and if like WBO strips her at the end of the month when they finish their show cause and all of this, will probably be in January at this point. Then what'll happen is it's vacant, and they'll look at their rankings, and people can pay for the opportunity to contest for a WBO belt.
Oh, I see. Okay,
it'll be vacant,
right?
And we'll see whether WBC, IBF, and
she just fucked off her whole career. She just was on her way up, and now you just fucked off your whole career.
Yeah, by coming up with this book, and she made it even worse with this ridiculous hair test.
Right,
it's not
excuses
recognized
and all that bullshit. Nobody want to
no anti-doping body uses that as their primary test. It's blood or urine.
Miss, I go to church every Sunday. Talking all that shit. It's always the Christians. Always the good ones. Always,
but the point here is that, and nobody, since in the absence of authority, she's taken it herself. And if you're Alicia Baumgartner, well, of course you're going to do that. Go ahead, prove that I didn't, prove to you. It puts the authority on the back foot.
Right.
She has a positive A test. We know that. That is fact. But anything after that, in the absence of governance,
she
can do whatever she wants.
You pop dirty on the A, you might as well just fess up. Okay?
Yeah, but
meanwhile, own that shit.
All over social media. Oh dear, poor Alicia.
It wasn't me.
The state of Michigan had a long record of terrible hometown officiating, and it looked like they were going to try and revive themselves, and then the head of the commission left after these two fights, and they don't have anybody in charge. And so no one's in charge of that. So no promoter should go there. No network should go there. It's crazy land. It may be big for there are many other sports that exist in Michigan and specifically Detroit, but they're run by various sports leagues that have their own structure. This is boxing, so it's crazy hour for that. Right. And by the way, what's Shields doing? I haven't heard anything about the Gabriel's positive test didn't affect her, obviously, because Gabriel's didn't
happen. Nothing happened. Again, the state of Michigan, they never did anything. Gabriel still has her belt. She has a WBC world belt. World heavy or world light heavy. She's got a belt. She's got two of them right now. One is heavy, one is world light heavy. And,
WBC.
One is WBC, the other is one of the other.
Pointed out that the recent World Boxing Council had their convention in Tashkent, Uzbekistan, another place that's known as one of the most wonderfully uncorrupt countries in the world. And if you look at the stuff that they put out, there's a couple of pictures on there where they had all these different people together. And one of the featured speakers at their convention in Tashkent was Gafir Rakhimov. You might remember his name. He's a disgraced former president of AIBA, and he was around that led the IOC to originally suspend AIBA. Worse, in 2012, the U.S. Department of Treasury put financial sanctions on Rakhimov and several other individuals, accused them of being part of the so-called Brothers Circle criminal organization, which are a bunch of allegedly international drug dealers. And so he was too messed up for AIBA, but he remains a vice president of the Boxing Federation in Uzbekistan, which is still part of IBA, not surprisingly. But more, the WBC holds their convention there, and there are pictures all over the place of Rakhimov added as one of the speakers and one of the people there. So the WBC could say what they want about a clean boxing program and drugs and this. Why the hell do they have Rakhimov there?
Because it's all bullshit.
Yeah.
So we'll talk another day because I've got to go.
All right. So look, folks,
Gotta close.
that's going to be it for today. Thank you guys for tuning in. Melissa, you want to tell the people where they can find you, baby?
Sure. I am at Girl Boxing now, still on Shitter. And Threads, trying out Threads, of course, Instagram. My website is girlboxing.org. Have an article up on Melissa McMorrow, who's one of the unsung champions of the pre and post Olympic era. And I'm just trying to give a shout out to some of those women who really held the ball. And other than that, thank you for listening, and, really look forward to our next show.
Right on. All right, Eddie, tell the folks where they can find you.
Yeah, I still am on Shitter at NHP News. The discussion level seems to be sinking lower and lower there. So I'm not, I really don't know where the hell else to go. I am still doing my Patreon page. I put up a couple of articles about Saudi Arabia taking over heavyweight boxing and related type of issues. So you can check that out at patreon.com/Eddie Goldman. You don't see these kind of issues that we talk about on this show and that I talk about on the Patreon page, discussed in the so-called boxing media. It's just a horrific. Stuff gets worse and worse and worse in terms of the toting to the promoters and networks. So that's why I put this stuff behind a paywall. That's the only way to get some income coming in from this, because you're not going to get it from all the shills and the clowns that are out there. And my site is eddiegoldman.com. And if you have a better idea of a social media site, which I don't, let us know. Let us know.
Right on, Eddie. Thank you very much. Thanks everyone for tuning in. I am your Fight Goddess. You can find me on Instagram at Fight Goddess1 and on Threads at Fight Goddess1. I'm trying not to go on Shitter, but sometimes I am there. You can find me on Shitter at Angry Afro Radio, because I am that Black angry woman. Until next time, you guys hit that subscribe button, hit the notification button so you know next time we drop a video, and we will see you the next go round. Peace, love, and boom.